All right, James. We just had John Henry Scherck, Mr. Two First Names on the pod. What'd you think? Very different. It's a
Very different.
different type of pod.
The second half is definitely out of my wheelhouse. So you don't hear me much in that second half. So
Oh yeah, true.
if you're into the agency side, B2B kind of software, I guess marketing and distribution that'll be up your alley. But the first half, we actually spent a long time talking about John Mueller's tweet, the one I guess that went viral. When was that? Last week? Or very recently when you're listening to this. And with the reactions from the niche site community and kind of going through some different opinions around that, kind of voicing ours and John voicing his I guess you could say devil's advocate take.
Yeah, I think it's important for us to hear the other side of an argument. Otherwise, we're unable to think critically. And it was refreshing to speak to someone not in our community and not in our own echo chamber. And it was good to chat with him. I think
Just
guys.
another niche site hater, bro.
No, I don't think he's a hater. He's just like
He's playing.
he's like an agency guy. But
Yeah.
I think guys, give it a listen. If you want more of the B2B marketers on the pod, let us know. If you don't like John Henry, we'll let him know as well. But comment down below, give this video a like. Our podcast is kind of popping recently. Actually,
Oh, nice.
It's kind of popping. So
How many downloads and listens are we getting?
I think we're at about like 1,000 per episode.
Oh
almost.
shit!
Yeah, it's
Dude,
solid, dude. This is like
famous now.
Yeah. I was talking to Tom Wang the other day. I was like, man, our podcast is growing so slow. And he really kind of put it into perspective. Like, if we think about it, 1,000 people in a room is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So just got to think of it like that.
Shit,
so shout out to
we'll be holding conferences and shit.
Hopefully. Shout out to you listeners. Give the video a listen or pod a listen. What's good, everyone? It's Jackie Chow.
And this is James DeLacy.
And you're listening to This Week in Digital Marketing. All right, welcome to This Week in Digital Marketing. My name is Jackie Chow. My co-host is James DeLacy. And today we have a spicy guest on, John Henry Scherck, the man with two first names. And we can never trust a man with two first names. How's it going, John Henry?
It's going great, guys. Thanks for having me on.
All right, why don't you give the audience a quick intro about you? We do have some things in common. We're both SEOs, but I think your audience and our audience, the Venn diagram is like a sliver. It's like a couple millimeters thick of our overlapping audience. But why don't you give the audience a quick intro?
For sure. Name's John Henry Scherck. I've been doing SEO for almost 15 years now. Started out pretty early in the space. Have worked with a lot of different business models, but moved to SF or San Francisco, like right when cloud and mobile started really taking off. I'd say a little bit after mobile took off. And I've been working in B2B SaaS, mainly venture-backed companies, and like larger team dynamics versus like niche sites. However, do own some like a sliver of a niche site and do have some experience in the space, but I'd say most of my time's focused on the enterprise. But I think there's a lot that we can talk about, like how we view, like when I see a niche site popping up in some term that we want to own, like how we think about it, how we approach it, how we maybe block them out. But, very excited to be on the call. I think it's always good to learn from folks who are super in the trenches too. Like I definitely look to you and some of the stuff that you do, Jackie, and that you publish to be like, how is this really operating on like a tactical level? So I think even though our audiences probably don't hang out at too many conferences, there's a lot of overlap in what we actually do and how we think about things.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And how do you? And you're based in SF or in the West Coast, I believe, right?
I'm in Los Angeles. I'm just outside Los Angeles. I used to be in SF, and then when I started this company, I run a small agency. And when I started, I went to the co-working space that I originally worked in SF, and it was like $700 a month for a desk that I don't think you got to own the full time. So I was just like, I'm not doing this. Like, this is too expensive to operate here. So moved down to LA, which is actually a lot cheaper than SF if you live frugally, and have been building this business for about 6 years now. I'd say we work with like best in breed software companies, have a team distributed across the United States, growing slowly but steadily. Definitely not the biggest agency out there, but I think, we're your favorite rapper's favorite rapper.
Yeah. And do you think there, you being on the West Coast in Los Angeles, helps you get these software companies who are, I'm guessing they're based out of Silicon Valley, right? Do you think there's a benefit there?
I'd say physical proximity, no. Working in the industry, yes. Like, I'd
Got
say
it.
there's people, but also like just with this agency, like a lot of things have turned to software. I have customers. Before I got into working in software companies, I worked at two pretty well-known SEO agencies, Sear and Built Visible, and worked for a smaller one in Chicago that was small but mighty, Digital Third Coast. But I still get leads from customers from those periods. And I think it's about like having a presence, being able to speak to executives, and also like most agencies are pretty bad. So if you can deliver results, I think you get a lot of referral business. I was talking about this with a buddy the other day. Like I see, and I talk to a lot of consultants that are like, I'm going to post once a day. I'm going to respond to 5 threads that are, maybe going a little bit viral or something like that. I'm going to build my social presence. And that's that's helpful for like selling ebooks or building a YouTube channel or something like that. But like really, at least in my world, like B2B is, those services are bought, not sold, and people that are connected often go through a referral network or like through their network. So I think working in that industry, being in that office day to day, building those contacts and peers, that's what led me to be able to start this company, is like getting in the industry versus like physical proximity. I do think it definitely helps. I think it's harder probably to sell if you're like in Kansas or something like that. But with remote
Hey,
post-COVID,
what did Kansas do?
I think it's just harder. I think it's harder to get exposure to a software business if you're in the Midwest and working like fully remotely. I do think COVID changed some things, but I think it's much easier to like have that in-person human network and then sell into those businesses. I think that goes for anything, not just software.
Are you scoping out where to live, Jackie?
No, I would probably, I think long term, I'll probably stay in Canada, Vancouver, just because my parents are out here. Interesting. Gotcha. Yeah, that was just a quick question before we get into the spicy details. I didn't know Kansas was going to catch a stray from that, but that was cool. All right. You mentioned earlier we wanted to talk about the thread that the John Mueller's thread, and how Jamie IF, a friend of the pod, actually posted a tweet about, how the lack of transparency at Google, and they should have some sort of line of communication with the niche site community. And you wanted to take a spicy take and take the other side of it. Why don't you lay it down for us, and then we can chat about it a bit more.
Yeah. All right. So John Mueller, big respect to John. He basically talked about like, are there other industries where really low quality producers like brag about what they do and they're idolized by their peers? And then a friend of the pod apparently, who I don't know, nothing against Jamie here, but he laid out this like, we need to have clear, productive conversations, and we need to be understanding like where are the algorithms going. And I saw like the CEO of Ezoic took my side, which like I don't know how you feel about Ezoic, but that was I'm on.
Jackie loves them.
Yo, let's talk about Ezoic afterwards.
Okay,
you go.
I'm more aligned with him. Like I do think, I know that early on in SEO, back when like Matt Cutts was on the scene, there was these meetings where like SEOs would go in, learn from Google, understand what tactics were going to be out, and I think that was like very helpful R&D for Google. But ever since I've been in the game, it's been like very spammy vendors. Like some of my first experience with like I used to use like Build My Rank or Linkvana, like those early providers that were like really powerful PBNs back in like pre-Penguin days. And it was always like, we knew we were kind of up to some bullshit. And I think like, I've never seen niche site owners who are like, and there are like a great example of like a very quality affiliate site that I'd say is niche is like The Prepared, which is like a prepper site, but it's very well done, extremely well researched. And if you're going to do that, like, I don't think Google owes that guy anything. I also don't think that guy's worried about too much because he's got a very successful business. I think if you're like mashing together AI generated blog spam with like paid links and being like, we're going to build this into like little mini properties that make us money, like you're actively making the internet a bit of a worse place. Like I think that's what people complain about when they complain about Google's like losing quality. It's more like we're pumping it full of shit. And I think that this idea that Google owes us traffic, or that like Google should be telling us what they're going to do so we can anticipate their movements and keep flooding it with bullshit, is just like kind of a wild take. Like I've never expected Google to have my back or to be like, oh, we're going to like work with you to make sure your traffic is fantastic. Like if anything, they want to sell us ads. They maybe want to sell us like some big query credits. They're there as like the whole search console team, like those folks like John Mueller and the other guys that answer questions. They don't owe us that at all. Like I think that's there because brands have questions maybe that spend a lot on AdWords, but the idea that he needs to like help the CBD and gambling space or whatever, like whatever spaces this guy called out in the tweet, that's just like, that's wild to me. Like they owe us nothing. We're lucky for the traffic we get, I think. And definitely it's gone down over the years, like with like how ad layouts have changed, and SGE could be interesting. I'm not very bullish on it. I think it's kind of a fad, but, it was just, like this interaction. It's like, it's a, no offense to Jamie. I just think it's like a very entitled take of like, you should be talking to us and telling us what to do and how to run our businesses, which like all Google wants to do is return value to shareholders, like not make their product, like give people the ability to make their product worse. So that was my take on it. I do want to hear your response or why you think they owe us a line of communication.
Yeah, I think, a couple of things I do agree on is immediately they're trying to return value to shareholders. First and foremost, they're a for-profit company. Shouts to capitalism, and John Mueller doing these office hours they're effectively like on. It's not on his own time, but it's like he doesn't have to do that. I will say the only counter I have to most of these arguments is that they are very, with the communications they do provide, they're very contradicting sometimes. You mentioned providing, spamming content out into Google and trying to profit from it. I mean, that just sounds like Forbes to me, selling backlinks. That just sounds like Forbes to me. And if you look at best CBD oil right now, Forbes is on the top. And they're also on top for best VPN. And honestly, I think some like web hosting keywords, like, so I think John Mueller always puts out, he loves saying, or the Google team loves saying, put out helpful content and the traffic will come itself. But that's just not true. So I think the only thing I agree with in Jamie's tweet is that pretty much like it's very contradicting, and there's like an issue with like parasite SEO because of these, the heavy push towards, I don't know, authority. But I do agree with you that Google doesn't know shit. Like why would they? They don't have to tell us anything about the algorithm. I think John even having office hours is like a great thing for us. And I think maybe the SEO community, especially the OGs, were probably a bit spoiled with Matt Cutts, right? Because he was like a stand-up guy, I think. Well, I got started a bit before he left, so I just remember everyone was pretty much on their knees for him, and like themselves left and right over like his profile pictures. But it's I think that's the only other side I can take. But I do agree with you. They don't owe us shit.
Going back to Forbes, just to touch on that, I'd argue Forbes is more of like a platform than almost like Substack or something like that, than it is like an actual publication. Like they've gone through similar to like Medium in a sense. Like you can ask to be a contributor, you can publish, you can benefit from that. I don't know if maybe Forbes is doing like the CBD stuff and the VPN stuff, like because they know they can rank, similar to like how TechCrunch years ago just had like an e-commerce site on a subdomain because they knew it could rank. And there was like some service that would do that with high authority publishers where they just like spin up an e-commerce site on a subdomain, build internal links to it, rank it, make money off that. With Cut, I think, and I'm not sure, like I'd love to reach out to some, I wish that we could like phone a friend and get someone who's really in the shit, like, 15 years ago. But I think like with Cuts and those early talks, it was more about like R&D and actually figuring out like, what are you people doing? And like, you tell us some stuff, we'll tell you what we're going to knock out. And it was very much like a tit for tat, but Google eventually didn't need that anymore. And I think like also digital marketing was like weird 15 years ago, like telling someone you had an SEO job, you had to explain it to them. And now it's like on Succession, people say like Kendall was like, we need our SEO, like whatever, and like talking about Google Analytics, and most people could pick up enough to get that. Like things have really changed, and it's not this esoteric, weird little industry where you're like submitting to directory sites humans are never going to see. Like everything's the internet now. So I think like they don't really need that back and forth feedback loop and can use AI or other systems that they have to get there. But it's just like this idea that Google owns like an affiliate dog food site traffic or needs to tell them where the algorithm's going, it'll just make the algorithm worse. So I think we're pretty much in agreement there. But yeah, like I think we got a little spoiled. But it's just nuts to me that like people don't see, as we talked about, like it's all about returning shareholder value, and that's all they really care about. And my guess is big brands want to know how to operate in search and get organic search traffic, and that's why a lot of those tutorials come out. Like it's not for the help of the niche site community.
Yeah, I think the problem is that people take is the idea like Google talks about, you know, they don't want spam on the SERPs and people to spam it, but yet you've got these big authority sites ranking shit content just because they're leveraging their brand or their authority they have, and people will take issues with, okay, it's all about topical authority, relevance, and giving the best content possible for whatever it is. Yet you don't rank because you have these sites in your niche or even out of your niche, like Jackie mentioned, like Forbes, that just kind of cover everything, and then they rank for it instead. And it's kind of irrelevant whether the content is better or good or better. And I think that's where a lot of people are currently taking this issue, because Google's talking about, hey, we're going to get rid of spam, we're going to get rid of this and that. Yet it seems that the more they say it, the more they overpower what's already there.
Yeah. And also just to touch on Forbes a bit more. I mean, I think a fellow on Twitter, I think Sean Hill worked at Forbes, I believe, right?
Yeah.
James? And he talked about like some of the tactics they were using. And let me tell you, it is probably, I'm pretty sure Google wasn't aiming for this when they've, when they thought of the algorithm. I think a couple examples of keywords I see Forbes on, I think it was like best Viagra, best CBD, best VPN, best SEO company. I know that because I was like researching how to recreate clutch.co. And they're just selling slots, they're selling the position, like number one position. I'm pretty sure they removed that, but they did sell that.
What's interesting is Sean was saying, even on that podcast, even to me after I interviewed him on another one, is for at least in the industry he was in with pet insurance, they didn't sell the slots. Those were legit reviewed by people and put in the order they thought was right. I don't know if that's across the sites. It doesn't sound like it. I mean, if you have best SEO company, you're definitely not doing probably the best of what you think. You probably are selling slots and something like that. But I don't know how site-wide it goes.
Yeah, it's a interesting business model. I'm sure they're banking because they're like if I was consulting for Forbes, I'd tell them to do the same thing. And also, I think, yeah, once again, Google doesn't owe us shit because we're like, as the niche site community general, let me say that. And I'm like trying to game the algorithm the whole day. Like I use the parasites all day, every day. James, my Canadian parasites that are like no one uses. I'm going after like the insane casino Viagra CBD keywords. I'm making the world a terrible place, man. I'm like, but I don't mind because like if they ever, I don't mind that they're not communicating the algorithm to me, because like I would have a severely unfair advantage if I knew everything about it. But yeah, I think I'm just out here trying to make a quick buck. So for me, it's not a big deal if
you're also diversified though.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
So that's probably why I speak like that.
Well, I think a lot of the folks in the community are like, I'm in some Slack rooms and whatnot, and it's like I have my one site, and this is it makes me my entire living. This is my nest egg. I'm gonna like flip this for however much multiple. When really, like I think the way that you're doing it, building like a portfolio with different types of tactics, different niches, different type of content. That sets you up to just like be able to withstand some aftershock or some change up in the algorithm. And I think like that's the right way of approaching it versus like making a big bet on one site and hoping that, you can fly under the radar of Google and be profitable for years to come. Like, I think if any of your sites, well, hopefully not any of them, like if Indexy got torched, I'm sure that would be a big deal. But like if any of your smaller sites got torched, you'd be fine to, throw in the chips on that one, start over, and just view that as like a learning experience and a loss. And I think that's a healthy mindset that keeps you going and allows you to stay kind of nimble.
Yeah, yeah. And that's something I try to hammer home on with like people in the news site community, especially James, who's probably overexposed on the news sites right now.
Hey, I'm building out YouTube too. I've got other channels, man.
Yeah, but it's still Google, man. I think grow one into like well into the six figures, and you should dump that shit. Like, John Henry, you believe SGE is just a fad and it's not here to stay, and where 10 blue links are still in the foreseeable future?
I don't know if it's 10 blue links. I think the SGE thing was a response to like ChatGPT getting a lot of traffic very quickly and Google needing to say like, hey, we compete here. We've got crazy shit underneath the hood that you haven't seen yet. And I think that was just a very quick, like, hey, we're still in this mix. We don't want to see our share price go down or something like that. I think it was more like a message to investors in the street than like, because it's opt-in only. You have to sign up for it through labs, I believe. Like you have to be kind of a nerd. So I think it was more like a PR thing than like a we're going to change search thing. I think it could move in that direction. And, but I don't necessarily think that, well, let me rewind here. I don't think 10 blue links are forever. I think when you kind of scroll down on a mobile phone, you can kind of see different formats. And once you get past those 10 blue links, I think that could become a bigger deal. I think personalization and really figuring out like, what does this person want? What are they looking for? What is in their area is going to become more of it. And that's already local personalization is already here. But I think, I don't think AI generated answers that can't fact check are going to be the norm, or if they are, it's going to be for things that are very much not up for debate and are like factual, like what are the biggest arenas in Dallas or something like that, like very pragmatic. We basically have a featured snippet here, but I think there's too much to risk at Google for them to just be like spinning up things that are even remotely questionable or have some, because then it's like, oh, the algorithm's deciding. Like people reach out to Search Master people or the Search Console team when they see like a result they don't like, and like Google's liaison has to apologize for it, and it's just like there's too much room for chaos with like auto generated controversial answers and things like that. So I don't think SGE is the next phase in search. I think it's more just a preview of like, hey, we can kind of do this. We want you to know that we're in the game.
Yeah, I think I do agree that it was a response to ChatGPT, and with like the hype of ChatGPT kind of dying, I don't know. I don't use that as much as before. I still use it as like an assistant tool ish. What about you? Are you on that still?
SQL queries and like
okay, so like what is it, code helper or I don't know what
code helper, maybe like rewrite this paragraph to be easier to read, like a grammatical check, something like that. But anything where you're like, hey, explain this highly technical concept to me and make it easy to understand, the risk of getting it wrong is too big. And if I don't have the ability to say this is wrong, I don't really like getting information from it. Like if it's a topic that I know and I'm like looking for an answer, or I can quickly test if it works, like a SQL query, I'm much more comfortable with that. But if it's like me on like a knowledge journey trying to like learn a topic, if I can't cite the source and be like, oh, this is actually factually accurate information, I'm a little nervous to pick up to like learn from it.
Yeah, I agree. But speaking on SGE just quickly, I agree with you. I think they'll come out with a different format of like search. So for example, if you search up best VPN right now, it's going to have links, but they'll have like lists of companies at the top. It's kind of like movies of like where Leonardo DiCaprio is in, and it'll have like a snippet of like movies at the top. So I think it'll be like a sort of a rich snippet type of deal that will be in the future, or in the near future at least. But more of that. So, but with that said, it's still going to push down the links, right? And it's going to have less visibility with links and the websites.
Interestingly enough, though, like when you get into like the best VPN or I'm looking at a space that we worked in that had one, and we had a customer who like was very adamantly not going to be involved in affiliate stuff. Like they were just like, we don't want a partner program. We charge this much for our product. We make this much off of it. To give an affiliate a cut makes no sense. And then the search pages moved to having that sort of like block of various selections where you can see everything. And they're not in there. And they are one of the bigger people in their space. I don't want to say who the customer is.
That's fine.
And I think it was like because they never played the affiliate game and never got in all of those comparison sites that they didn't end up in that box. So it was kind of an interesting, like, oh, if you're not in an affiliate world, you're not getting written up by all these folks. Google's not going to have this large, like understanding of the entire space. You're going to be a lesser size, like a lesser part of that space, or not viewed as like as critical to that space. I don't want to say entity or some word that I barely understand. You're not going to get in those boxes. So I thought it was interesting that like our customer, who is a big brand, who doesn't have affiliate stuff and isn't in all those comparison review sites, just never got in there, and they're still not in there when I look at it.
That's messed up. That's interesting. That for them to not have an affiliate site and be quote unquote penalized for it. I guess it would make sense that Google, like, you know, in that block of VPNs, that if you don't have an affiliates program and no one's listing you, then you wouldn't show up there. That kind of reminds me of how local search works, right? Because that's how like NAP consistency and the amount of times like you appear on directories has like a impact on local rankings, which I always thought was weird. That's like so spammable. But I guess you can also spam this in a way, but I guess Google is looking into more, how do I say, authoritative sites for this.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think like it is spammable, but at the same time, like the idea is like, I guess you have to have your location verified, usually by postcard or by phone number. And I think like really what they're looking for is like a confidence interval that you are actually in that location versus like it being, because I don't think like naps themselves, I haven't done local search in a long time. We're actually getting back to like a big local search initiative with the company. But I did a lot of local search when I was at Sear for like a large financial company. And I think for them, it was just like Google did not know if this company was in this location. And by getting, 100 different sites to be like, oh no, this is really it, they can be sure that you actually are there versus just like, a shared office space or something like that you're not willing to invest in. I don't know. And like, it's been a long time. So like maybe someone like Darren Shaw or Andrew Shaw can come on and talk about it. But I think it's more a mix of like reviews and links and topical authority now. And I think maybe 10 years ago when I was doing it, it was much more like, let's use Yext and like get 50 NAP citations instantly or 500 instantly. And it definitely gets you on the board. But I think ranking now, I could be wrong, is like a bigger factor of like reviews and overall site authority and whatnot.
Yeah, I think so too. But also the one thing I've done for like a cannabis company, for it's local, right? Because in Canada it's legal. All you have to do is, well, build a ton of backlinks, obviously, so links do matter here. And NAP consistency, but what we built, how we did it was via like PBNs. So you have the NAP, but the site doesn't link to the website. It's like a unlinked hyperlink, URL text, if that makes sense. Like indexy.com, but it's not linked. So it'll never get quote unquote penalized. You won't get penalized, but it still shows up as like NAP on Google. So and that worked like in a week, and that was pretty crazy. And the cannabis company ended up being very happy. So obviously you can't spam that, but that tactic still works, if that makes sense. What doesn't work is like getting them on directories that is like always spammed. So you just gotta be careful there. But yeah, how do you with your software clients? And I guess you saw the byword.ai's case study, right, with causal.app. What do you think of that? Would you ever do that with one of your clients?
Sorry, the byword and causal case study, I don't think I saw that.
Oh, okay. So byword is just you've heard of byword. I think you linked me a case study with them. Yeah. So Jake Ward, I believe, is the CEO, and he posted a case study on Twitter and LinkedIn that went viral of how he took causal from like 20K a month traffic to 200K a month traffic. And all he did was he pretty much just like queued up 5,000 articles and then just blasted it, and it just took off like a rocket. I've taken a look at the content. It's absolute like nearly spam and like pretty trash, and all of them are exactly 800 to 1,000 words, and it's always keywords targeting like Excel functions, and Causal does, I think, something around Excel. It's kind of like I have no idea what it does. I'm not even on the site right now, but is that something you would utilize for your clients? Is like generative AI?
I mean, I'm not against generative AI if it's used smartly. I think like the case I shared with you that was on the MKT1 newsletter about ANROC using that for like is SaaS taxable in state, where they have their own data. I think that makes a lot of sense. That's like very much attached to like ANROC's product, which is like tax automation for SaaS companies, I believe, or so I think that's it. With Causal, I mean, they're like building board reports. My guess is it integrates with Excel or something like that, and people that are using Excel would do this. But I just feel like my critique of Causal is, I mean, it's great for the traffic. I think good for brand awareness, but like that's so far removed from people who are like, let's get this new type of solution. It's like so much of that is like Stack Overflow traffic of like, how do I do this function in Excel? And so I'd say for us, we're more focused on like figuring out where people are on a buying journey for enterprise software and getting in front of them at that time frame versus like lots of ancillary traffic. And there's value to that. Like I think Mode has a big library of like SQL, like how to do SQL and how to do Python. And I could see folks that are potentially like end users of Mode who maybe aren't analysts getting some value out of that, or people who would one day use Mode getting some value out of that. But that's not something that's going to like drive a lot of qualified purchases from business buyers today. Maybe we'll get some like free accounts from folks who could eventually buy. But the pathway of like, I need to learn and the pathway to I need to buy are two separate things. And I'd say we're much more focused on I need to buy versus like 500 articles that are like, I want to learn about something ancillary related to what this product does. So I'm not against it, but I think if you're doing the how to buy stuff, generative AI is a sloppy, cheap way to do it. And I'd rather have like a product marketer or someone who deeply understands the space do that content versus outsourcing it to like a tool like Jasper or something like that, or Byword or whatever. So, I mean, there's a space for this, but like, I think it's better for like an ad driven business model than like a SaaS company that needs a lot of focus. Like I'd be very curious to see of the accounts that came in off that, how many, like out of all the traffic that touched the directory or whatever that all these Excel tips are in for, and that's what it looks like, primarily Excel tips, it's Excel shortcuts and how-to content. I'd be very curious to see how many of them signed up for the product, and of those people that signed up for the product, how many converted into paid users, and in 1 year, are they still with the product? Like how much revenue is this really generating, just instead of like, I don't know, mind share and awareness? You could make the argument that, oh, well, this gets us links. We can use that equity to like rank for more competitive terms that are in the buying process. But I don't know if you needed to do all that. So I'd say like good for that company. I hope it goes very well for them. I'd be very curious to see the revenue on the back end.
Yeah, I mean, my guess is it's like next to zero. Yeah, I would say with high certainty is next to zero. Maybe you get some like trials, but it probably resulted in no strong ARR. But yeah, I mean, I think I've seen your interview on Siege a couple years back, and you were already talking about like clusters and topical authority, and I feel like nowadays topical authority is like a bit of a shit show because you can reach quote unquote topical authority with AI with like a click of a button, right? You can talk about all things dogs right away in like one click. How do you feel about that? Like, how can you compete? How can your customers compete if they're still using, human writers? How can they achieve this topical, like highly coveted topical authority when everyone else is just spamming the SERPs with AI? Like, what would you recommend for them?
For our customers typically are like post. We have some customers that are Series A, very few customers that are seed stage. Most are like Series B or later. And it's just like the amount of links that our customers have picked up from highly relevant sites over time just blow out anyone that's trying to compete with us on like a, I don't know, some like spammy affiliate site. If it gets like lower, because we have worked in the VPN space before, and it's like the amount of links that a VPN provider picks up compared to an affiliate site, very, very different. And when I worked at WP Engine, there was one guy who did, I think I sent it to you, like Kevin is his name. I forget his last name, but he would like run these tests of like all these different managed WordPress hosting services and compare them. And it's like, he was putting in more effort than any other affiliate out there. And he had a fraction of the links that WP Engine would make. Like our velocity of links was way higher. So I think, it's less, and it's funny because like I big time disagree with like getting like 2 links or 5 links or paying for a service to get links to your homepage. You can get good relevant links to your content, awesome. Otherwise, it's like generally not worth the cost, I think, a lot of the time. So I'd say, one, just by nature of being like a real business with real employees that does real things, like Will Reynolds was talking about this 15 years ago, like real company shit, that puts us on a different playing field. But then also like the content that we write, we have a real audience of like real professionals in the space with pretty much every company I work with. So we have a distribution channel of email and social and like real connections with real people versus like some person in their basement writing a dog website or something like that. That's just like, that has no connections to the industry and is just applying for affiliate offers. So I think like that real world connective tissue puts us on different footing than like anyone who wanted to compete with us. We've worked in the product analytics space for a long time, and there are sites that teach people how to be product managers and how to use those tools. We outrank them if we put something together that's decent. So I think it's just like we are much more of an authority in the space than like a educational site that has, a cohort of educational courses and whatnot.
Yeah, I think what I've noticed with working on the agency side, it's similar to what you were speaking of. Like they've done all the hard work, right? They've gone out, raised a ton of money, got a product market fit, got a fuck ton of backlinks, and then now all they have to do is turn on the tap of SEO. I feel, and I feel like they haven't done a good job before, and you just all of a sudden fix up some best practices, and they're just like mooning half the time. It's so easy, and that's why I personally have been like working on partnerships. It's just like I can help them monetize their blog more, because a lot of them, I don't know if you're seeing this, because I guess you're working with like Series A or B or past, so they have a ton of money in the treasure chest. But the ones I've been working with are like people, maybe they raise a ton of money and then they need to monetize quick. So maybe the product market fit isn't there, and then now they have like a lot of traffic on their blog and they need help monetizing. So I'm like, yeah, let's time to make this a niche site, and like it'll be like a blended niche site X SaaS company. I think there's something there, but how yeah, I mean, I guess.
Wow, I don't want to. I mean, this isn't outing anybody, but are you familiar with Snack Nation?
No. What's
You
that?
should check them out. It is. It started out as, my understanding is, it started out sort of as like they rank for like employee engagement keywords, which are very, very competitive, because if you're buying employee engagement software, that's a software that has every seat for every employee in your business. And if you look at their site, though, it is like has a lot of similarities to like affiliate sites, advertising. It's very clear that like there's more going on here than just them marketing Snack Nation, and that is like the best that's an actual like real world manifestation of that, of sort of like, we have this offering, and the offering is not really software. I'm guessing the margins aren't software margins because they're selling physical goods like snack packs for offices. And then this blog though looks like highly monetized, which I think is like a really interesting play.
Yeah, because I mean, they spent all this money, built a great product, and now they just need other channels to monetize. I think obviously that won't happen if they're a unicorn. They don't need it. Like, you wouldn't see Stripe throwing up affiliate articles anytime soon. But I think there's something there. If they're like down in the dumps, they're not, VC money's drying up right now. If they need like some way to get profitable fast, that's one of the ways. But like, how do you approach a client? So let's say, I think a good example may be maybe an SEO software tool approaches you, they raise, let's say, do you know Content King?
I
Content
do know
King app?
Content King. We use Content King.
Yeah, I know the, I think one of the co-founders, well,
Great guy.
Steve. Yeah, great guy. He he recently sold to Conductor. Congrats to them. And I think they had a pretty good approach. Is that how you would ask these SEO software tools to approach their content marketing strategy? Like to go after, for example, Content King, they do like real-time SEO audits. So they went after technical SEO terms. So something like tangentially related, not buyer intent keywords, but they're going after like informational technical
Mm-hmm.
SEO keywords, right? Is that how
Mm-hmm.
you typically approach it? Like similar to the software companies you work with?
I think it really depends on like the product market fit of the company. And like if people are trying to buy the product right now, like no one was looking for like real time auditing software. Like that's not a category of software that people know how to buy. They need to like, there's like SEO platforms essentially. And then to there, you have to get to this technical SEO platform that does real time monitoring. So I think like the demand in search wasn't there for their end solution. So they had to build awareness, show people what they could do, show people how they solve problems through like some pretty excellent product marketing that they had on their site, and then get market share that. But like also they did a lot of social. They were very big on social. They did a lot of like influencer type stuff, working with like, I think they had like Kevin Indig, who has got a pretty big brand, brand megaphone or personal brand. So I think they had a pretty healthy mix, but I think it goes back to, can people buy our product right now? Like if you're trying to sell procurement software or ERP software or something like that, like I think trying to teach people about like the basics of procurement, probably not the best use of your time. Like I'd be more focused on like buyer's guides, comparison pages, things that are finding folks that are in market. And if you have something meaningful to say on one of those topics, like, I don't know, like spend under management or like how to, like where procurement's going, like trends of procurement. If you have something to say that's meaningful to write about, that's going to help you build an audience, then do it. But I'd say if you're just going to do, this has a lot of search volume, it's not too competitive, we can get an article out there and start getting some traffic. Like that's the big difference with B2B SEO versus I think consumer SEO is like you're oftentimes buying commodities and you land on a page, you get to that solution. With B2B SEO, it's about like getting the traffic and then showing them your value and getting them interested in your product enough to sign up to be on your newsletter or take a demo or sign up for a free trial or get a free seat on the product. So I think you need to pick something that's not just like, is there traffic here? Can we rank for it? But do we have something to say that's going to show people why we're different or why we're better, or how we can solve their problems in a unique way that they aren't currently thinking about? So I think there's a product marketing element that goes into B2B that's just not really there with the consumer side or the affiliate side.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually what I wanted to learn because, I do have some B2B clients, but they're not so much like enterprise SaaS. So maybe they're like B2, I don't know, small business owners type of things. Those are much easier to go after. They're so easy compared to B2B enterprise is like insane. I don't know, like for example, cybersecurity. If you're working with like the public sector, that shit takes forever. I don't even know. I guess you're aware, but I don't even know what kind of keywords to go after. You know
Well,
what I
the
mean?
thing that's
Like,
interesting though, so with like with security, which like kind of goes with like a lot of securities like SIM and like logging, and we do have some experience in that space. And CEO of Datadog, which was a rocket of a stock during the pandemic, and has a lot of respect, and it's like what a lot of companies get comped against in that space for like revenue multiples and whatnot. They talked about like how content was so key to their go to market and like how developers wanted to learn, and they were using search. They had a lot of ad blockers on. So like Datadog has invested a ton in SEO. And I think like once that happens and people kind of give out their playbook, search is such an effective channel. I think there's a lot of people are starting to realize that paid media is really expensive and oftentimes leads to like pretty transactional sales, but not like long-term retained value. I advise a company, Audience Plus, and that's kind of the whole thesis is like owned media and owning your audience is so much more valuable than paying to get in front of folks for each page view and then hoping to convert them. So I think that with, security, cybersecurity, I'd really go with like, just to start it out, like, what do you really solve for people? Like, what is that thing that, like, if people are looking for you, they're like, oh, this is the way that we need to do it. And that's what's worth taking over. And sometimes there's only 40 visits a month for that term. And I'm not a fan of like the 0 keyword approach strategy. I think there's definitely worth writing content that doesn't have search volume for it. You just need to find a different distribution channel. But with B2B, if it's like, if you think of it as like, oh, that's 40 accounts and each account closes for, 150K a year. That's such valuable traffic. If it like really is like the crux of what you do or the problem that you solve better than anybody else, that those 40 visits, like let's annualize that. Let's say it's 500 visits a year. If you can convert 1% of that traffic into a demo, and then you can convert one of those demos into a paid account, that page pretty much pays for itself and then some. So I think like it's thinking about it more of like looking at the math of the business and figuring out like what's your lead to operate, and then like how quickly can we convert like trials to demos or whatever, and kind of reversing that math back to like, if we create this page, how much does this page cost? And then what's our payback period on that page, or what do we need to have happen to make that page worth its time? And you're going to make bets. You're going to make bets that don't work. Not every bet will, but I think it's about having like a portfolio in your content inventory of like smaller bets that are lower traffic and high intent, bigger bets. Cause also just to like, we get access to some pretty cool tools. And one that our customers often have is Visible or Ramp Metrics. And that connects the pixel that someone gets pixel. It connects their data to the CRM and can show you like, oh, this amount of pipeline came off this page through this channel or whatever. So you can really start to connect web traffic to the CRM. And once you can do that, like we do see like the what is our category page. Maybe it's not like the, what is our product in a technical space. Maybe it's not like the CMO of maybe it's not like the end practitioner reading that, like the person who's going to be in the tool all day, but like the CFO or a decision maker or someone who's signing off on it, they will read that like basic intro 101 piece. We've seen that a couple times. So I'm a big fan of like different types of content for different levels of awareness and different levels of technical sophistication when you're in that space.
Gotcha. And I think the B2B software side, is it hard to justify SEO for them? I know they're a later stage most of the time, and it's more of like, it might be sometimes a box for them to check off, but when they're, I don't know, when funding is drying up and they're asking for attribution, how does that typically work for you guys? Do you guys have like attribution set up, like we generated this many signups, this many trials, or is it more like we generated this much awareness and visibility, so it's more of like a sessions type of reporting?
No, I mean, some companies go for like want sessions. I'd say like some companies want that, like the brand team will want that. They'll want a certain amount of traffic or like to know they get a certain amount of visibility. But with every company we work with, we try and either get access to HubSpot analytics, or if they have like a data team we can work with and they're using a solution like Visible or Ramp Metrics, we'll try and do attribution to pipeline. Like how much pipeline is this content generating? Because like, especially I think if you look in the HR space, the stuff that's really high traffic is oftentimes for like end users of the HR platform. Like what can this employee do to like, how do I have a hard conversation with my boss or something like that? Which like those people aren't usually buying like mid-market and enterprise platforms. So I think the high traffic stuff oftentimes is like not the buyer. And like if you're selling a product that can only be bought by 5,000 companies or 10,000 companies, any page that gets over 15,000 or 20,000 visits a month, like it's not going to be your target demographic. It's not going to be your ICP. So I think that's why I like doing the attribution to like smaller, highly qualified pages. Looking at conversion rate from landing page is also important. But and seeing like, is this the right traffic? Is it high converting? Is it high intent? But really trying to back it all to the CRM. Because I think like for me, one of the most illuminating things was when I went from agency side to in-house. And like agency side, I was like, oh, we got this many conversions in Google Analytics. And I thought those were like people who'd show up to a demo and like actually show up, instead of like rescheduling 5 times and then canceling, or being a spam form fill, or just like being, or like also on the other side of things, like people who are trying to use on a self sign-up side, like fraudulent credit cards. And if you're in an agency and you just have access to Google Analytics, you're not going to see that the like VPN client of yours, those like massive amounts of conversions that it came through, it was like people just testing fucking stolen credit card numbers. So I think there's a lot when you don't have access to the CRM and you don't have access to what the actual business is getting on the back end. you might think you're knocking it out the park, but like unless you can actually see how much revenue's been generated from this traffic, you have some big blind spots.
Yeah, I think that's the blind spots is you're right on the dot there. But one thing I've noticed, how do you argue it when you notice some other parts of the business not following best practices? Let's say you generated X amount of leads, like 30 leads a month via your efforts, but then you notice like, I don't know, you get some sort of clarity into their HubSpot, and then you notice some of the leads aren't being touched by the sales team, not being reached out to, like this type of stuff. How do you justify that to the client? They're like, hey, none of the leads you generated converted to cash or money or revenue. And but then it's like other parts of their business. Do you call those out, or are you kind of like, hey, we done, our job ends there, type of thing?
So I mean, salespeople are comped on like what they kill. So I've never worked in a business where like we have decent leads coming in and salespeople won't talk to them. Like maybe they're really bad leads and salespeople start ignoring them if we drive bad pipeline, or just bad leads in general. They don't even convert to pipeline. But like, just to go back to it, like I worked in one business where one guy was showing up. This is before we had this was a up and coming business. It was before we had like round robin software for leads or anything like that would distribute leads evenly. He would just come in at 5 a.m, get all the overnight leads that were international and just start dialing and just like going through them as quickly as possible. And it's like, that was not the right move. That was not that was a bad actor situation. The guy wasn't bad. There wasn't rules in place. It was just like not what needed to be happening. Cause it was basically, if they weren't ready to buy, he would just burn through the lead really quickly. And like, that's more like the behavior that you need to watch out for versus like someone like taking like very poor approach to leads versus like putting them in a nurture pile and giving them the respect that they're due instead of like a bad experience if they're not going to help you hit your number. But I think I've never worked in a business where we're driving quality leads and salespeople are like, yeah, I got better stuff. Like that's all they want to do is hit their number. That's all they're comped to do. So that hasn't been as big of an issue. I'd say like distribution of content can be an issue where like maybe we do some SEO stuff and the team doesn't want to give it a lot of air cover or like promote it on social because they're not like proud of it like they would be some like big thought leadership piece. And that's like a bigger conversation about like how does SEO fit into the go-to-market overall. But I'd say like I try and explain like this is the pros and cons of doing this. Like if you don't want to be known for your SEO content, you don't want to share it, it's going to grow a lot slower. And we're putting a lot of money and effort into this, and that's why we're here. So if we don't want to promote this, it's going to be slower growth. But if we can blend this in, if we can feature it in the newsletter, just like that little amounts and like kind of making smaller asks over time until you have more trust. And that's what I'd say is like building, like if someone just ignores what you're doing, it's likely like a trust issue. They don't trust you. They don't trust the content you're helping them put out. And so I think it's more about like earning trust and aligning with everyone versus like someone just not being willing to like get your leads across the finish line. Like every salesperson wants to close. So if you have quality leads to deliver, they're going to talk to them.
Gotcha. Yeah. Just something I noticed maybe is just like the smaller market software company mindset.
Like a solo founder. Yes. Like totally. Yeah. Like if they're overwhelmed and it's like, that's not a great lead. Like I could see that. And that's honestly why we try and work with more mature businesses where there's like accountability and structure and leadership and people who are fully responsible for getting that across the board. But yeah, if you're working with like a solo founder who's like trying to manage product and investors and has limited bandwidth, if you're not driving like the best leads that are ready to close, I could see them totally ignoring them. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess final question before I let you go. With what I've seen working with like the larger companies, especially like, the publicly traded ones, the way they move is so slow. Have you had issues like that before? Like you give a company recommendations and implementation comes, a couple sprints down the line, and next thing you know, you turn your head and it's like you're 5 months in and they're asking for results, but none of the suggestions have been implemented.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say I think that when nothing's been implemented, most of the customers we work with kind of own that it's like, this is on us. And I'd say the other thing though is if you need a lot of implementation, if you need a lot of bandwidth from engineering and design, and those resources are going to be part of what you're doing, you should try and figure that out before closing the deal and making sure those resources and that budget's there. And if you just like blindly go in and be like, we're going to figure this out. No, by the way, in order to do this, we need X amount, 100,000 or 200 or $300,000 more to like pull this all off that no one forecasted, no one budgeted for. That's kind of a you issue as a consultant. Like you should have made the cost and like the commit more clear to the customer before getting started. That being said, like a lot of people are slow to implement. We have worked with some public companies that are like, this is the other thing though. Like we worked with one company that we were basically just doing content briefs for them after a while, and just giving their technical experts content briefs that allowed their technical experts to rank. That was like a huge win internally. Like I think that in really big companies that move really slowly, like getting anything out the door is like a win people can champion. And I just think it's like different levels of success. And also that company like ranked very quickly, and we could see enterprise impact from that, or some pretty solid leads come in from that pretty quickly. So we picked the right content. Yes, it took forever, but I think like when you have to get reviewed by legal and compliance and just getting anything out the door takes longer. You need to temper your expectations, but also go for sure things instead of like, let's spin up 200,000 pages of spammy content and then see what we get. Like that's just not going to fly there. So you probably have like 5 to 10 things you can get out the door, 5 to 10 initiatives in a year that you can really move on. So you got to pick those and go with like the big boulders versus like lots of little minutia.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. But yeah, I think just for me, because I've worked every side. I've worked enterprise clients. I've worked smaller agencies. I've worked the niche side, and man, dealing with enterprises is just so much slower than what I'm used to, and it's like killing me. So I mean, hats off to you for knowing how to sort through all that, navigate the murky waters of internal bureaucracies at these companies.
Well, I it's funny though, because I don't think I could do like the niche site stuff. Like I think I would go bored. Like I'm bigger into like personalities, getting, buy-in, creating like movement and aligning a team versus like sitting in a corner and just grinding. Because that is what like the niche site or like affiliate world is. It's like sitting there and just like doing the work yourself, being very autonomous versus like trying to get everyone on board with what your initiative is and getting them to execute. I think they're like totally different sports. I have a lot of respect for what you do. At the same time, hats off, because I don't think I could do it either. I think I'd go insane just like sitting at my computer, making this niche site rank, living by that traffic day by day versus like supporting a business's go to market through the same channel.
Yeah. And I think hence why the demographic of niche site owners are so weird. I think they just don't like talking to people. They're just very odd people. I'll save my real thoughts for when we go
alienated
offline.
our whole listenership.
Yeah, I mean, you guys all need therapy, and don't replace that with niche sites. All right, John Henry, where can the audience find you? I think we should wrap up.
Yeah, I'm on X. I just started. That sounds so weird to say. I'm on Twitter, but now X. Sounds not family friendly. But I am on the X site, formerly known as the Bird app. It's where I spend a good amount of my time. I just started a Substack. It'll probably come out once a month if you want to sign up for that. But Jackie, thank you so much for having me on board or having me on the show. Glad to be on the pod. Hope to do it again soon.
All right. Thanks for your time today, man.